That's really, I think that's everybody's comment back to you. But I want to borrow your eyes and minds and understanding about the kind of celebration of faith, how it impact in a culture, in a family way, individual family, maybe for yours, but also spiritual family for us. Then the impact of our overall culture in the time, the age where we are, in the society rather, where we are. So with young generation in particular, and your generation maybe as a parent generation, in between generation, if you will, from past to the future, and the bridging generation we are for the transition, that kind of context. Do you have any insight, comments, observations? Feel free to share a little bit. Culture, family as a key word. So let me get something to drink.
I don't know if I have much more to add from what I mentioned, just in kind of the walking out. And as, Nicole said, it's not a new thing to the Lord, but it is new to us as families, who were born and raised with a different way. And so, walking out of the old way. And, I do with 100% assurance know that each one here, has that desire to walk in a culture of God and no longer, the ways of man. So, and that's kind of one of the more elusive things, I think, that has been initially one of those things was like, well, we know we want it, but how do we walk those things out? And so that's another portion of the excitement, I think, is just to see a clear way to begin to walk those things out in our families, and just that family culture mindset. And I don't know another word, but I guess just I don't know, I don't want to say holiday, but, festivity culture, or the way in which we celebrate, in a way that's more Christ-like, and like Father. So, I see it as an ongoing thing for all of us, especially even with children that we kind of started just a handful of years ago, and not, there's still memories there of the ways from the past, and, just kind of, desiring to, not particularly make any new traditions or definitely new memories, but desiring to just, like I said earlier, be transformed, and made new, and build a new culture,
Well, maybe I can inspire Rachel's thoughts a little bit too, and let her continue, because I don't want to elaborate a lot. But just with Rachel and I have come to realize that at least at a very introductory level, that the family culture of God and the culture of God's house is not about only the culture in my household. The idea of an individual family unit is something that is very late coming in the cultures of our world, and has been highly developed and honed in the Western culture. And it has completely infiltrated Christianity. And it has made for itself a very high wall. In fact, even as I speak this, I'm remembering some visions from the past 10 to 15 years ago about the bringing down of the walls, which at the time we were interpreting primarily as the people of God going outside the four walls of the church. But I can assure you that the Lord wants to go much deeper than that. And there are some very high walls that the Western Christian mind has put around their concept of what family is and the culture of a family is, that have to be torn down. They have done, they are doing detrimental damage to the minds and hearts of God's people within the context and understanding of a true knowledge of what family culture is. And so I'm going to not elaborate much more, but to say what Rachel and I have realized is that we're not capable of doing that on our own. And it's not because we lack something. I'm not speaking that in pride. Let me say very forthrightly, I lack a lot. We lack a lot. We have a lot of shortcomings, but that's not the issue. Everyone has shortcomings along this line as parents, as, all those things. But what I'm pointing at is that God designed it to be a different way. He did not design the family unit, the mother and the father, to be the only influencer on their children. And that doesn't mean the only teacher or the only one that gets to interact. It means that child does not belong to you. It belongs to the Lord first, then to his people and to his body. That's there's just no room for that in today's perspective. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I could speak about it for a really long time, but it's been a very difficult realization for us. And I thought I might want to just kind of inspire your thoughts along that line and let you share if the Lord, if there's anything that you have understanding on or would like to share about that. I mean,
no, I can definitely attest to, that being a new way of thinking and understanding for sure.
I'm just thinking more along the lines of your observation of our own family and children, how that has played out or is playing itself out.
Yeah. Amen. I don't have a whole lot to add, but bless the Lord.
I put on the spot too much.
You thought she's gonna get inspired.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't trying to, quote unquote, inspire her. I just didn't know if she had any personal observation about that in relation to what she sees.
That's our topic. We all in our little families, coast to coast. Don't want to be critical with that word as well. So we have beautiful families. To cross that wall to enlarge our bigger context according to at least the biblical pattern or the community God has given to us, it's a practice. It takes time, especially for young ones. We're thinking the young ones, what they're thinking their family look like, what the envisions their own family going to look like as they coming of age. They might entertain those thoughts for sure. So, do you think? What the pattern, what the origin of those relationships, so the contextualization of a family, I think most of the time it has to do with my family, so my individual family. And, that there lies its orientation, that's a touchstone, so, but God never intended for his family, we're the family, to be constructed. I think that's where Tim's observation is so keen and so needed in this day, this hour. And I thinking a lot about, I wrote this article called The Great Divide. I talk about how to educate children, either through a family culture, with a greater community, a relational dynamic, or through schooling. To basically teach them subjects and educate them with the information. They give them a different option, different visions for life they can excel in. Then go for it, So get it. Go get it. They don't cherish actually your family and the community have not a seed per se, but a heritage for them. Blessing for them. We know that if they recognize the value of those things on the long term, for their life. They look like any man in the world. They're going to go far and spanning their own homeland or home country to go to seek another ideal land, which like Abraham did in the past. At this day, many people do. But willing to fulfill the whole culture, basically, totally immerse and replace one another culture, because the thing that inspires their life or secure the blessing in their life need a fundamental overhaul in that regard. I'm just talking, so, but it's very hard when you're in a culture like ours, of prosperous society like ours, with a team so accurately pointed out that Christianity has totally fulfilled its real way culture building, that turn to other means to do culture building for society, for family, most like is nation building rather than culture building, and right? People building. So that's a damage being done in the past century, particularly when American began to flourish, the idea American dream began to flourish, American prosperity began to flourish. The gospel as presented is basically miracles, beautiful sermons, beautiful understanding of the Bible. But while the witness all the downfalls of society yield, the broken down of genuine relations in community settings, in family settings, so, and most times the family settings based on natural fashions, not upon spiritual heritage, on a cultural heritage anymore. Everybody is willing to sacrifice or volunteer their children for them to seek out their own vision for life, to have their own culture set. Do what is best, learn what is best for you. The school will teach you, the politician will teach you, the great teachers of the Bible will teach you. I remember there was a friend, I'm just chat a little bit and have my own comment on this. There was a beautiful friend, James was his name. He was a member of Grace Covenant back in Austin. We have a very beautiful friendship going on. One time I asked him, why are you interested in related to China? He was learning Chinese from me. We often turn to prayer meetings, he would weep, cry, and we share spiritual things. Those times we were young and not really understand certain dynamics in others' lives. One thing I asked him, why are you interested? What's the struggle you have? Because he always wanted to be missionary, and the wife freed him for being missionary, so basically he has to give that up. And then they moved to Austin from other places with a beautiful job and trying to just found a church for the children, They moved to Austin basically for their children. And they go to different churches, try to find the best Sunday school or some school for the children, That's why they choose Grace Covenant, because there's a school there or something like that, children ministry. He later on lead the children ministry for a while, not in official capacity, as a helper, I guess, for a while, which Tim's dad actually be children's ministry there, youth ministry, that church. So I'm familiar with him. I was surprised to hear that he decided they stay with that church is because they thought, it's going to be beneficial for the children. And they sacrifice everything. I admired them in the beginning. The more I thought about it, this is not right. So this is not right. Anyway, the reason I thought it was not right is, the parents basically forego the responsibility and the confidence that they're capable to educate their children. In godly ways. I'm talking about the other education. And they have no confidence that they get hold their family together, that children can be established in certain ways, did not free the outside world. They had to go to other people with a similar vision of life, similar, we talk about the Grace Covenant, and most of you come from that church, the environment. And I heard the result of their youth ministry is not necessarily shining result. So I think over the year I heard Tim particularly talking familiar with certain ones. Most of them actually turn away from the Lord. Am I right, Tim? What was the percentage you giving this broad approximately estimation of that?
It's hard to say. I just know that, from classes above mine to those within another 4 or 5 years, there was a very significant falling away, in pretty extreme ways. I've seen some reject God completely. I've seen others ascribe to Far Eastern religions, and others become incredibly cynical and critical of their upbringing and any kind of conservative moral value. Others have, literally changed their identities. And so that's even some with the more stable, some of those who have gone on into ministry have at best kept an old tradition. And so the heartbreaking ones are those, not only the young people that I knew, but to know and see the struggle of their parents. Of course, I don't think that that's too different from, the experience that my own parents have had. And, like Ben and Cheryl's parents and others that have, there's been a lot of loss from that generation. I saw something the other day that was really rung out to me as almost like a very insightful word, and it was completely out of this particular context, but it was back in the mid-centuries, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, when there was a real push, especially on the part of the Catholic Church, to go to the nations and the Far East nations, China, Japan, and others, and they were just terribly, terribly persecuted. And they were going there in ignorance, honestly, and maybe not even with the grace of God fully with them. But they were very passionate about what they did. And at one point, one of the rulers that was leading the Inquisition, the persecution, was having a direct conversation with the priest, and basically gave a parable, an illustration to this missionary, that it wasn't that their people and the elders of their people had not considered or weighed out the benefits of Christianity. But what they said was, and the illustration that they gave is basically, it was very simple. It was, would a man marry a barren woman? And everyone knows the answer is no. I just was dumbfounded by this illustration. Because he then said, our culture has determined Christianity to be barren. It produces nothing for the people. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is something that doesn't say what is right or wrong about an Eastern religion or understanding or anything. These were people who were primarily of a Buddhist background. But to have that kind of insight into the barrenness of the church for the last age is terrible. Now, what I'm equating that to is that my parents' generation as a whole, because this is the generation of whom we've seen such a great falling away, had they anticipated a lot. They invested a lot in their children in this same way, with this same cultural mindset, with this idea of what a family should be and how it should relate and how it should protect itself and how it should be taught within its own little boundaries. And they were very confident about their ability to give that to their children. And ultimately, it was a barren field. That's terrible. That it's painful to even think about. I can relate to the pain that they experience at that loss. And the bitterness that comes with it. So, that's a very sobering reality to look at. We're one generation behind that as parents.
Yeah. Well, we, mention those details of life, our own life, actually, more as a case study, a backdrop for some, the things God is doing substantial in our midst to put in more context, and through this season, you guys are aware there are certain relations feed in, feed out. I'm sorry, not feed in, and some meet together, So I know I've been little prophesied over this. I said this year is going to be a year of shaking and open doors, closed doors. They say, So, well, talking about later on more details, I said they're going to be dead leaves going to fall down. Certain branches going to be pruned. I'm more talking about more than beyond the personal relation. It definitely apply personal level. But the thing has to do with the vision for God. The great divide, I wrote that article. The Lord revealed to me, because to do with the Leviathan spirit, that is the day the Lord gave me a sign. The Leviathan spirit is going to overcome by us. The dragon is going to fall down. And we need a proper context for sure for that. But later down we can talk more along those lines. So you look at that, through the year we talk about the work of religious spirit, the work of familiar spirit, quote unquote, use those words, were lucid term. What's really is try to steal from the will of God, the vision God has for his people. It's imputed, replace another culture outside the culture of Christ in his love, in his unity, in his blessedness want to give the people. And for sure, individualistic pursuits and fulfillment of personal whatever aspiration in the Lord has been a great mistake, I believe. It's like the seed in the beginning sowing in Eve's heart, and deceived Eve. But Christianity as a whole had never challenged as a fundamental educational input in anyone's life, especially young ones that we see before us, as that's dangerous. That is literally feeding your children to the wrong altar. But we have never examined from that the spiritual dimension, if you will, what it means to impute in the early days modern culture, but appetite, if you will, a desire for true wisdom of life. What's your vision expression of life should be like if you are to fulfill God's destiny for your life? And that's sure going to expressed in today's leadership, especially. There's a good divide right now. How to school or educate the children. I use the word school intentionally. This is all behind a discipleship. The word really is in God's word, discipleship. Today we use the word schooling, education, stuff like that. But you look at that, I'm also talking about combined with the ministry of angels' songs. Angels' wisdom, the best of them, is impart information, impart know-how, impart reality. You have an insight of how things arranged. But songs have a higher wisdom. Why songs have higher wisdom? Because they serve the Father from a different vantage point, from a different relationship. They have to engage a different counsel. They have to look at the things more than as a task, as something going to be happening and need to be done. They have to look at the ultimate purpose and why God is doing these things, right? What does the Father desire for these things to take place to begin with? So they're not merely interested to have God's work to be performed. They're interested in why this need to be performed. The perfection more than in God perfectly fulfill his mission or his word. The perfection is that everything he does is out of his love, out of his goodness. There's a perfect intent behind it. And I think in the days to come, we'll see God's intent, ultimately, his perfection is love. It's a culture. It's not just doing things, get things fulfilled, understand the supernatural, understand the future. So we see a schooling of people of God begin to unfold because you have to use, eventually this is going to separate into vehicles. The ministry is interested in gifts, in supernatural, in merely prove God's word is infallible or going to be fulfilled, and spiritual dynamics, spirituality are real, and spiritual tooling, whatever the word used, are available for you. Spiritual, I heard a certain preacher propose God's culture is like this. In heaven, you're never getting sick, you're never getting sad, you can never have the ill side of life. So you should have that life on this side of your life as well if you really know how to get heaven on earth. The guy wrote a book like that, I think. What a shallow and a folly way to understand the true culture of God. These are kind of things going to lead God's people into a great falling away. Because life never is like that. The Lord never desired like that. It's not that people are not to be healed or God cannot heal. It's beyond the question. God will do that. And we eagerly pray those things be real for all God's people. But God's culture is not those sides that's the best of human interest or benefit. God's culture has everything to do how he as a father, head of a family, if you will, and a head of the ruler, the sovereign over a dominion, a kingdom, a government or race. Why he does these things, how he does these things, for what the purpose of doing it, how he go about it. And you look at that, definitely he's not going to go to heavenly affairs by just healing people, by just casting demons, because those things are already done. We overcome those things, beyond those things. So what God intended to do? Evidently, there's a different fellowship, different discipleship unfold. I presume that's what Paul is speaking about. You, if God permitted, enter maturity, it's to do with his business. His business, yes, started with preaching the gospel, healing the sick, getting people equipped in the spirit for sure. But ultimately, it's what it means to be a holy people, chosen people, to be a royal priesthood in our fulfilled sonship. And that being said, we all are aware of this, but I try to combine these two together. So what the Sons ministry going to be look like in the days to come, look forward to? It's going to have to do with the discipleship through a culture setting, a kingdom culture, family culture setting. I'll just give you the vision. This message right now is still a message people excited about the revelation, but they're not excited or volunteer for the practice. So here, for those who have seen the vision, have glimpsed these things, they are not willing to go to the altar. They're not going to willing to walk in this path, basically lay down the old things. We see that divide, I believe, in this season has happened, literally happened. And it doesn't mean God don't work with other things. And then we can see that there are other ways doing ministry. It's basically schooling people. I have understanding, I have gift. Let me impart to you. Let me share that with you. Well, that's basically a teacher knowledge or skill sets. But the host of the Lord need fathers. I'm not talking about the spiritual father as some proposed. I'm talking about some eldership, some leadership. They can, like Jesus said, my kingdom come. I am here, my kingdom with me. It's more than cast demons, heal the sick. It's that he's the Father's culture that causes away from the chosen people or holy people. The one who is holy, he's the keeper of them sanctified through his word, make them holy unto God. That is the ministry of the word of God. The word become flesh really means. And my point is that we see the charismatic, the main thrust and mainstream, the main theme of their ministry, the Pentecostals, has totally missed the mark, including the past many strains of Christianity. And today we have one vantage point to look back, and this point I just pronouncing not a judgment per se, but a discernment, a balance, a standard to measure what is really the ministering for, what orientation, what culture they came from. She said, we speak what we know, what we try to present to you, reveal to you, manifest to you the things where we came from. And until you know where you came from, you can't really reveal anything. Most people still pointing, let's get to the Holy Holies. Let's approach the ark with fear and tremble and with holiness. That's for sure true. But you can't be a priest merely understanding only the things that are to come in or pointing people to where to go. You are priest has the major portion priest, blessing and grace is the things God gave to you to come out, to reveal it, to bless it. My point is we need to discern as leadership, as once in a generation, you're going to be a bridge for culture transition, for generational transition, or transformation, if you will. You got to understand the vision God laid before us. It's not going to be schooling young people. It's going to be do family with them. So therefore, teams of revelation and passion for these things is it's very, very important, very, very insightful and meaningful for our people and for God's people in general in this time. And I pray that, the time of Faith Tabernacles, our talking about how to educate young people will be a catalyst for us, to not just lay everything on the table or give your children to the Father, to God, to bless their life. It's a catalyst. It's an open door for you to enter into a great realm, to be blessed by God. And as a result, for sure, because we're going to be a stepping stone for them, our job to bless them, to help them, to build them up, and then they will be blessed. You know, the Jesus speaking of the Pharisees said, you step in the door, and you don't want to get in, and you don't want others to get in. I believe many God's ministers, in the end of the day, in end of their life, they have imparted a different culture, different vision for those that discipling or teach minister to. And they continue standing in the door, said, come to me. But they standing there, only want to point to people, said, look, I will show you the glimpse, what I saw inside the house of the Lord. But they have never been planted in and ministered in the house of the Lord. The minister I was talking about, exactly this weird notion. For example, there's no sickness in heaven, therefore we need to pray for everybody to be healed on earth. What a misleading message in representing God's culture. What a misleading culture. What inspire young people to be? You know, go to the street to pray for people. Sure, that is good. But those young people, how's it going to educate the children? How going to carry their life into the age, in greater age, in old age? What kind of members it will be for those that relate to them? Really they can disciple with. I don't think we as a people of God has applied real discernment of those things. Now bring this forth not as criticism to anybody, but to evaluate the necessity and the value, the preciousness of the things that God has opened for us. And the blessedness we as a community that choose people, and a great responsibility for young generation. Amen. We don't want them, for example, to think they're inferior, disadvantaged, or perhaps some weird traditions. We want them to be a new people, basically. And with our heart, we have to agree with the vision, dedicate to the vision, and invest in their life accordingly.